Woohoo! Hey, hey everybody. I'm doing a session. It might be a little bit educational. I apologize. I'll try to make it fun though, and not very painful. But I really want to get into accessibility and understanding why we use accessibility. There's a session I do called Accessibility, Everything for Everyone All the Time. And I feel that that's an important part of accessibility. And Mote is a really powerful tool that does pretty much all of that. So, first off, that's me. I'm a Mote ambassador leader, currently a computer science teacher. I'm also an adjunct instructor with a university here in Minnesota, where I'm from, where I teach a course on educational technology, specifically intentional use of educational technology. And I'm also an ISTE certified educator trainer. So I spend a lot of time really in the weeds, if you will, of the whole use of technology tools in education. Um, and it's a lot of fun teaching teachers. So anyway, before we get started, we really need to decide what we mean by accessibility, right? And it can mean a lot of things. So we're going to use this first example from C right here, and I will read it out loud because that is a part of accessibility. Accessibility is the practice of making information, activities, and/or environments sensible, meaningful, and usable for as many people as possible. A common example of accessibility that we have all likely encountered is the context of architectural design. So the idea behind accessibility, many of us can use stairs, but a ramp can be used by all and it benefits everyone. And so that's the definition of accessibility. But if we're going to use an educational context, what we mean here is, put simply, accessibility in education is about making information readily available and easy to digest for all types of students. Accessible education empowers students with disabilities to develop the same skills and achieve the same level of knowledge as their peers. And I want to point something out. Just because it can empower differently abled students, it's not the only reason to do it, because it benefits everyone. So there are 4 types of accessibility we're going to talk about. I warned you it was going to get educational. I apologize. And this one is called POUR. It's the acronym, well, POUR. And so each one of these has a different specific thing. So perceivable, in order for educational content to be accessible, first of all, it needs to be perceivable. So in this case, it means information and user interface components must be presented to users in ways they can perceive. So this means that users must be able to comprehend the information being depicted. That's the first part of POUR. Next is operable. User interface components and navigation must be operable. So the interface cannot require interaction that a user cannot perform. So in other words, it must be easily usable by all, the way to make it function. Understandable. Information and the operation of a user interface must be understandable. So it should be very clear cut. Users must be able to understand the information as well as the operation of the user interface. So, in other words, it should be intuitive, I guess, is the word we're looking for here. So, and finally, robust. Content must be robust enough that it can be interpreted reliably by a wide variety of user agents, including assistive technologies. As technologies and user agents evolve, the content should remain accessible. So, the term, I guess, is evergreen, if you will. So, Mote is all of that. That's right. Mote can do all of these things. So, let's do a little demo, shall we? We're talking about perceivable. The idea here is the information and user interface components must be presented to users in a way they can perceive. So, I'm going to start off with this untitled document. Ta-da! All right, if you're like me, and I know I am, when I start typing something, I'll want to give it a title. So we'll call this document accessibility. It's kind of hard to see for everybody, so let's do one of those. Accessibility. Okay, So I know that that's the title, but if you're using a screen reader, you don't know that's the title. It'll just start reading. One of the things that's important that we don't often think about enough when we're using even docs or Word documents or anything like that is this part right here. This is not only a great way to signpost a document to make it easier for you to look at when looking at this little outline dealy here, right? See, now it says that's the title. But if you're someone who is using a screen reader, this will now go through and read this document and say that accessibility or title of document, accessibility. This is something we don't necessarily think about, but it's something that's very helpful to everybody. So not only did it, because now even if I don't like the size or the shape or whatever, like I want to go back to, I mean, old school, I want Times New Roman. Where are you? There you are, Times New Roman. So even though I want this to be Times New Roman and I want this to be a size 12 like everything else to be old school APA, this looks the same, but because I set it as the title, now someone using a screen reader is going to see that this is the title of the document. But we can take it even a step further with Mote. So I can highlight this. And then if you look over here, because I have the Mote extension installed, I click on this and create a hypermote. So I'm going to click here. The title of the document is accessibility. So now what it's going to do is, let's say you aren't necessarily using a screen reader, but now I can click on this as a user and hear it. And because I could be giving this to someone who does not necessarily speak the same language as me, I can now click translate and choose one of these other languages in order for me to read it. It will still come across the way I said it. So that is one way that you can make your accessibility perceivable. So now someone using a screen reader will have it come up like that. And there's now the hypermote that will allow the user to hear it as well. Another thing to consider is operable. So the user interface components and navigation must be operable. The interface cannot require interaction that a user cannot perform. So in other words, it has to be, a way to put this is you're not going to put it on the highest shelf, right? Like if it's something physically in space. But one of the nice things about Mote is it is very easy to do. As long as you can click the screen, you can make it happen. So I'm going to come out to this. This is the document, my original slide deck. We're going to come right here to perceivable. If I wanted my students or my learners or whoever to be able to hear what it is that this says, I can just go ahead and insert a Mote like this. Operable. User interface components and navigation must be operable. The interface cannot require interaction that a user cannot perform. So now it is right there. I click insert and it's going to auto-magically, love that word because it's true, auto-magically insert it into my deck, right? And the best part is all they got to do is click here. That's all my learners have to do in order to use this accessibility tool. It is fully operable because all they have to do is click this right here and they'll be able to hear it. Again, you won't, but you heard me do it the first time and they just simply click this and it's going to speak aloud. So, and if you want to make it even more convenient, it is possible to change the look of this by uploading an image or just going in and changing it through format options. But honestly, what works for me, what I find that my students are able to understand and navigate and click on the easiest is when they see this, and I leave it as the Mote colors because I love the purple. As long as you leave it like this, my students know that, hey, I should listen to something. It's got that little speaker, guess it's not an emoji, speaker icon, right? And they know to press on it. Next is understandable. Information and the operation of the user interface must be understandable. Users must be able to understand the information as well as the operation of the user interface. And again, Mote does this perfectly. What it does is it gives you an icon that is clearly a speaker, and you can use this to click on it and understand what it is you need to do. You can also, I'm a big fan of doubling the playback speed, but that's just me. Anyway, the idea here is by it being operable, be chucked into anywhere. Oh, yeah. I love that Mel threw this up there. Also, good to see you, Mel. Love that Mote can be chucked into anywhere. And that was something I was going to talk about, but you've already brought it up. Mote works beautifully with literally everything in your waffle, right? If you are a Google user, it's going to work on literally all of it. So it's fully understandable. The information is, well, like it says here, understandable. It's something that I've really enjoyed doing with Google Forms. So let's just do a real quick example of one right here. Let's just create one. I can right here give a description. Accessibility and demo time. So I can come here and I can choose to insert my Mote right there to be, I stopped it early, but now I can have my examples be like, I don't have to type the question. I can have the Mote be the question, right? I can also, which is even better, my students have the opportunity to, when they respond, they can leave it as a Mote. They can click to record their response, which again, as soon as I've explained to them what this is and they have it installed in on their Chromebook in their browser, right? They can use this for everything. And I've been using this for quite a while with many of my students. In fact, it was a blog post I was talking about where I would be teaching them words, and the form that they turned in was them recording their actual pronunciations, right? Because when I was teaching music, there's a lot of Italian words that the students don't know how to pronounce. So I could do something like this, say, pronounce fermata. Make it required. Have it be short answer. And then when I send this out, the students know that they have to click to record a Mote pronouncing fermata. Then when they do it, I can just simply see it in my Google Sheets, which is super duper fantastic. So it's a fully understandable interface that my students are able to use, and well, everyone, frankly, and robust. This is the one that I love vid to produce. So one of the things that I absolutely love about Mote is the fact that it is robust, and I believe the term that I want to use here is future proof. All of these recordings are saved on Mote's website, but you can also download those and save them in your drive, and you can keep them forever. So Mote has probably the most robust accessibility tools that are out there, because they're going to be stored as an audio file that can come with you forever. I have audio files that I first downloaded back in the heyday of, LimeWire and stuff like that, that are still fully functional because they're saved as an audio file. And the best part about Mote is it does that automatically. Everything that you save on Mote, you can download as an audio file. and you can embed it any way that you want. So I would say this is probably, it's hard to demonstrate, frankly, but it is the most robust tool that's out there. So I ended a lot quicker than I assumed I would, but I wanted you all to know how important accessibility is and how much Mote covers all of that. So, oh, hey, Will.
Hey, Rick, that was awesome. But you're not getting away with 19 minutes. Come on, I'm sure there's more questions. There's some more questions from the crowd out there. But while we're waiting, so you, I mean, like you obviously focus this on accessibility.
For sure.
I wonder, do you have any stories of how you have used accessibility to unlock, particular student success or a whole class even? How have you found broadly accessibility to really pay dividends for you?
That's a really great question, and I have two examples. The first of which is I had a student that recently moved to Bloomington who was a speaker of Pashto. And Google
Translate?
Yeah, well, Meet specifically.
Meet. Oh, yeah.
Because what we've been doing for a while for many of our students is we would have them just turn on a live Google Meet, turn off their camera, and I would blah, 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 and they would then do the captions for them. But that's the problem. It doesn't include Pashto, right? So that was not terribly helpful for my students. So I was able to use Mote with that.
Awesome. I should know that we support Pashto, but I was hoping that we did.
I might have the language wrong. I know it was a language that now
Urdu. We definitely support Urdu.
Okay, thank you. That was it.
Okay,
but yeah, it was not something that Google Meet does, right? Google Meet now has added a few more, but really it's only been English and Spanish and I think French. But like Spanish covered like 90% of our students, right?
Yeah.
To be useful for all. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Can share some accessibility features within Mote that are essential for learners who need it. Yeah, I would love to. I was going to share my one more example, and then I'll
go for it. All right.
And it's in my most recent blog post. I spend a lot of time having to, at least in my old life, right? When I was teaching beginner band, I would be constantly explaining these Italian terms because for whatever reason, all the music concepts are in Italian, right? I mean, there's a reason for it, but I'm not going to get into it here. The fact is, music terms are in Italian, period. That's just how it is. And so I would be saying like, okay, you're going to do this marcato. And marcato? No, marcato. It's pronounced marcato, march like. Cool. We did it marcato. Again, no. And so I would have these fermata, decrescendo. So I would have to, and I mean, I mispronounce words all the time because I think it's funny. Yeah. However, when I'm trying to teach my students, I would rather they know how to do it properly, right?
Yeah.
And so I was able to create a Google form that would I would put the words and then they would click a Mote and respond to it in the language like pronounced properly. The first time though, because again, I would tell it to them. Sorry, hold on.
Just trying to be helpful.
She was. But the first time I gave it out, I was able to use the Mote for me, where I would say marcato, and then they would respond, replying exactly the same. So they did it the first few times, and then the final assessment, right, was the one where I just wrote the word and they had to say it back.
Nice. So, that's very cool. That's very cool. And I think, like to your point, I mean, I think the fact that it just integrates into tools they're already familiar with, I think that's the power. I mean, that's really good. Okay, we're going to go to, it was Rick's big one. It was Mark's question about accessibility is essential for some but useful for all. Actually, I mean, I think both of those pieces are really important, and I actually think it's, you know, we always focus on the extreme cases because it helps, right, you know, illustrate, but actually, you know, that sort of useful for all element, right? Like giving optionality. I mean, I maybe if I can share sort of one perspective, which is, you know, I've talked over the years. One of the features that we have with Mote when we first launched, we've always had is voice to text transcription. And initially, you couldn't actually turn it off. and it made people crazy. And part of the problem was also, you know, originally we only supported English, and then we added other languages. People would say, "Oh, he doesn't know what language I'm speaking." Well, you can change the language setting, but we switch it off, and sometimes we try and switch it back on again for default. But what I try to explain is, as a recipient of this, it's so much more valuable to that recipient. So much more you can do if it has the transcript, right? Yeah. So you have, yes, of course you can listen, which is super powerful, and you have that transcript, so you can translate it, or you can go back and refer to it a second time. These things are just like, you know, again, I guess we know these things, but it's so important to remind ourselves and think from the point of view of that sort of recipient to give that optionality. Absolutely. So I think of that as an important, you know, really important, like useful for everyone, and even more important and essential for folks who really need it.
Yeah, like an example of that in my own life. I'm currently, technically, legally not hearing impaired. However, 23 years of beginner band. I mean, right, there's a lot of things I don't necessarily hear. Right. I don't know the last time I've watched something on TV that didn't have captions running. Right. I need it all the time. And that when you said we couldn't turn off the captions in Mote, I'm like, why would you wanna? But I can see where it would bother some people.
There are some folks, you know, there are some folks for the accent, or, you know, or they just haven't figured out the settings. So, well, this has been great. We've had a lot of love from the audience here. So thank you everyone who's participated and contributed comments. We really appreciate it.